All right, so today we're going to take a look at 3 films from the 80s. They are all adult cartoons, but they're not classified as porno or anything like that. These movies, you may or may not have heard of them or seen them. We got Heavy Metal, Akira, and American Pop. So I'm going to start it off with American Pop because, whoa, could have been disastrous there. I'm going to start it off with American Pop because although I love these 3 films, that's probably my least favorite of the 3. I mean, like, Heavy Metal and Akira, they're kind of staples, but American Pop is directed by Ralph Bakshi, who was behind Fire and Ice. He was behind Lord of the Rings. He was behind Hey Good Lookin', Coonskin, Fritz the Cat, a string of these animated films from back then. And this one is probably the first one that I've seen of his other than Fritz the Cat. And the story of this goes, it's kind of hard to explain, but it's a generational movie tied together through music and war, basically. It starts off with like a raid, like a Gestapo raid, and these people get they move to New York, and the son gets involved in like vaudeville and all that, and then that's how he gets his in the music industry. And then the next guy comes in, and he's already kind of got like the father that's, I think he was like he went religious or something like that, and the last son is just like the total like coke using, drug dealing, like rock star kind of guy. So you get 3 different flavors. You get like respectful, loyalful, and then you get just like kind of brutal rock and roll cocksucker of the 80s. It's really good stuff. Heavy duty animation. Like I said, the Gestapo raid in the beginning of the film, crazy stuff. There's a really just subtle scene where there's a guy playing, like during the war, they're like walking through a village or a town, and he just sees a piano, he starts playing it, and I just really thought that was cool looking. And all the vaudeville stuff looks amazing. Like, one thing about Ralph Bakshi, if you haven't seen any of his films, his character designs are amazing, and no one ever looks the same. Even like if it's like a movie where it's, like say Fire and Ice, like, or say Hey Good Looking, like nobody looks the same. Everyone looks different. It's so cool. So Ralph Bakshi really took his time, did this. You can, if you follow him on Instagram, I believe he posts all kinds of like conceptual art, lots of just cool backgrounds and stuff from the movies, even like a movie like Cool World with Brad Pitt. But yeah, if you haven't seen this one, I highly, especially if you're a fan of some of the musical acts that are mentioned on the cover: Jim Morrison from The Doors, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Leonard Skinner, and many, many more. Some of the others are the Mamas and the Papas, who did California Dreamin'. I love that song. Pat Benatar, Lou Reed, Bob Seger, and more. So yeah, man, rated R, good stuff. Next we're gonna go to Heavy Metal, or excuse me, Akira. This is actually a sealed copy I got from Shockstock a few years ago. This movie is killer, man. This is a near future kind of film. I think it takes place in 2019, which was last year, and of course it takes place after a huge nuclear war. And it's what's left of Tokyo is now called Neo Tokyo, and there's like an old abandoned part of the city. And it's all about like sort of these street gangs running the streets and all that. I've read a couple of the trades. I haven't read all of them, so I don't know the whole story. But it's the book is definitely attached more to the drugs. This one it doesn't seem so much, but I really like how it starts off with they're inside of this bar, and then our main guy Kaneda, he's like loading up a jukebox, and he's putting on some like American classic rock, and it's cool, man. And then the whole chase that starts off at the beginning with the other motorcycle gang, thought that looks great. Lots of cool explosions. The animation is impeccable. I should mention that this is written and directed by Katsuro Otomo, who of course did the Akira comic book through, I think it was a company called Young Comics or something like that. It was an anthology kind of thing, and then eventually it got owned by Marvel, like one of those little side companies of Marvel, and then they colored it. And I have some of those colored adaptations of it, and they do look really good. It's actually all computer color, I believe. Not all, but a lot of computer color in that rendition. But basically it's just kind of a movie about teenagers until all of a sudden there's this weirdo kid with like blue skin being taken around through this, almost looks like a giant not carnival, but like a big protest kind of thing. Like tons of people are everywhere, and or maybe it's just packed busy streets, but you sense there's something off about this kid, because he's like causing glass to explode, and like all this crazy shit. Disappears almost. Like, I think he does disappear at a point, but um, he runs into our motorcycle gang, and then boom, that's where the movie really kind of starts off. And one of the one of our kids from the gang is taken away, and you know, they start doing stuff like fucking with his head and all that. And that leads to our kid Tetsu, who's sort of like the runt of the gang, getting messed with by the government, and then basically slowly, you know, developing these powers, or maybe powers he already had, and starting to go through these insane hallucinations that are really well done, with like a giant teddy bear and like just like the race car, like all this weird kind of stuff you get to see in this movie. Not to mention the like the backgrounds in this film alone are worth watching. The film, man, it's so much good stuff. Lot makes I heard this on the Cinemasker video. Makes Blade Runner look like Disney World. Video pick of the week by Siskel and Ebert. So definitely one to look out for. It all ends in disaster pretty much for everybody. So, you know, it's you're here for the story, and I would recommend checking out the graphic novels as well. So, also you should check out the art of Katsuhiro Otomo's son. I don't remember his name right off the I follow him on Instagram. Shunhai Otomo, I believe his name is, and his art is fantastic. He does a lot of like, it almost looks like ballpoint pen kind of stuff. So you can see some good videos of him drawing on YouTube, as with his father. There's a good interview with his father on there. It's like 4 parts. So yeah, man, if you're into like that kind of stuff, like the behind the scenes process of animation, check those things out. Because I'm almost more fascinated by how cartoons are made than by the cartoons themselves, in a way, just because there's like so much magic behind it, so much like science, that almost, you know, it's a long and grueling process. And especially a movie like that that's like pushing, what is it over an hour and a half, an hour, oh fuck, it's over 2 hours, man. Yeah, that would take a long time. Now, our final film of the video, and my favorite of these 3, Heavy Metal, Canadian classic. Yes, this film was made in Canada, despite all the American bands in it and all that stuff. There's Canadian actors, voice actors all throughout it. This is directed by Gerald Potterson, and the screenplay is by Dan Goldberg and Len Blum. And it's based on, this is an anthology film, by the way, which if you're unfamiliar with that term, that basically means there's 5 short movies into one, with an overall, like a wraparound story that holds them all together. But the stories come from Richard Corbin, who's a fantastic artist, Angus McKee, Dan O'Bannon, who I believe was behind Alien to some degree, and Return of the Living Dead, Thomas Workin, and Bernie Wrightson, of course, who's you know, one of the best horror artists of all time. I think a lot of people would agree. So basically, this movie starts off with this green orb, and that's our connector. That's what's going to be our reoccurring theme throughout all the shorts, is this green orb that's like an energy sucker. It's never really described exactly what it is. It's sort of like the eater of worlds and of children, in a way. But our first story is all about this sleazy cab driver in like near future New York, and it's amazing. Like it's at that point in time where like aliens have came over and have like domesticated themselves, and there's like race issues between like the aliens and that, and like the cab driver's a human, and he's like, you know, goddamn illegal aliens, like just being like what you'd think of a cab driver to be like, and especially in that era. And he's got like this bitchin' cab that's set up with all these different traps, and you know, just it's like a booby trap thing in case anybody tries to rob him, which people do. And it's really cool what he does. And he's got like his glove box is like full of guns. It's awesome. And he basically meets this chick whose father has found the green orb, and she uses the cab driver basically, and the cab driver basically shows her that no one touches Harry Canyon unless he wants him to. So yeah, man. The second story is all, I could be getting these out of whack, but the second story is about this little nerdy kid who's like a rock collector, and he comes across the green orb, and the green orb basically takes him away to this mythical land, and you know, he goes from this little white like nerdy kid to like this huge fucking black dude, and that can like hold his breath for a long time. He's super strong, all that kind of stuff, and he uses his powers to basically save this woman, and you know, he could have taken over and became like king of the land, but he said fuck it. He just wants his girl. He wants to get the fuck out of there. And yeah, man, there's a funny line where he's about to have sex with this chick, and he's after he already did with this other one, he's like holy fuck, 18 years of nothing, now twice in one day. Like, oh, it's so funny. Third story is all about I think that's a short one where it's all about like this trial is happening between this guy named Captain Stern, and he brings in this witness who basically throws him under the bus, turns into a huge fucking, through the power of the orb, he turns into this huge monster, and he wreaks havoc at this trial, fucks over the guy that's that called him in as a witness as his friend, and now he's being chased all around this spaceship courthouse. It's probably the least favorite story of mine in the movie, but it's still pretty good. That's the story that's based on the Bernie Wrightson material. The next story is a really cool one where you got like some World War II shit happening on planes with like they're shooting down other planes and all that kind of stuff, and basically the orb comes along and turns all the dead people in the plane into zombies, and then the plane crashes and now they're on a little zombie island. This one's rather short as well, but really well done. It looks fantastic. I think that's the Dan O'Bannon one, and my god, it's creepy. I actually have a tattoo of one of the skeleton guys, so that's fucking dope stuff. The next story is another short one where basically there's another kind of like little council hearing happening, and they're discussing all these alien type things, and this ship comes down and basically takes one of the chicks hostage. Not really hostage, but takes her up into space, and you got like these two sort of like Cheech and Chong types that are like doing this drug called plutonium Nyborg, which I love, and it's such a good episode, man. Short as fuck, but really good. And the last one is actually the longest episode, and it used to be the one that I hated to watch, and now it's one of my favorites for sure. And it's all about this girl named Tarnak, who's like the last of this warrior race, and she has to like save the day essentially from this band of marauders who got through the power of the orb basically got turned into these like, not really zombies, but just like these kind of like not demonic either, just like these assholes essentially, these green skinned sharp toothed assholes. So and it is a long one, and it's really good. There's a good scene in a tavern again with all the rotoscoping. It looks fantastic. So yeah, great music in this film as well by Black Sabbath, Blue Oyster Cult, Cheap Trick, Devo, Donald Fagen, Don Felder, Grand Funk Railroad, Sammy Hagar, Journey, Nazareth, Stevie Nicks, Riggs, and Trust. So heavy metal is kick-ass. So yeah, man, I do have some other animated films. Like I got Fantastic Planet, and I got Heavy Metal 2000, Fritz the Cat, all that kind of stuff. Maybe I could do a second part to this at one point. So with that being said, I appreciate everybody for watching. Check out the Facebook page. Yeah, adios.